Chris Mason. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And you talk about a lot of interesting things and a lot of interesting topics, but you go about it through a alternative way, through I would say something that's non-conforming to what we hear, right?
Mm.
And the biggest thing, a couple big things. It's OCD, anxiety, stuff like that. But anxiety. What is it, and what do you see are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to anxiety?
Hey, big question to start. So anxiety, like we all, I'm pretty sure most people know what the feeling of anxiety feels like when
Mm-hmm.
your body starts to feel overwhelmed. Maybe your hands are sweaty, you're a bit tingly, your heart starts to race. Um, it's the fight or flight system kicking in from when we were evolved and we were cavemen, and there may be a bear come across our path, so we get flooded with all this adrenaline,
Mm-hmm.
and then we quickly have to escape the situation. And the thing is, with modern life, it's become so stressful and such an unnatural way of living
Mm-hmm.
that people tend to actually live in that state of mind. Um, Quite a lot of people, pretty often, if not the majority of the time. Um, so that is it's like a sense of always being ready to escape something. Maybe you're worried that your boss is going to shout at you for not being good enough, or
Mm-hmm.
you're worried that your partner's done something behind your back, or whatever it may be. So you've constantly got this little thought in your head, and that's causing an emotional response in the body, which is the I kind of like I need to get out of here sort of thing. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to anxiety disorders, I've found in my own experience, it seems to be something that comes on once you're emotionally exhausted. So
Yeah.
like if you've gone through a stressful period of time and you've been thinking and worrying and everything's getting on top of you, your subconscious mind will offer you up this feeling of anxiety in a hopes that what you'll do is you'll step away from life, go back home,
Mm-hmm.
and then you will just sit there and recharge this emotional energy that you've lost. So you're
Yeah.
like, I'm at home, I don't need to worry about anything else apart from myself. Um, Unfortunately, the conscious mind doesn't tend to understand that subconscious message. So people then sit there worrying about the things um, that they're thinking about, even though those thoughts and those feelings are just a message from the subconscious to tell you that you're exhausted. And then it just ingrains itself because you're worrying about the fact that you're worrying, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
people tend to spiral down into these conditions.
So when it comes to anxiety, that's an issue that a lot of people have, but oftentimes it goes untreated. So they just have this revolving feeling that, of worthlessness, and they want to be better, and they want to become better,
Mm-hmm.
But w- why is it so big now? And, even though a lot of people know about anxiety, it's not taken seriously.
I Yeah, I would say it's lots of people know about it. People are starting to wake up to meditation and
Hmm.
like Eastern traditions and that sort of thing because they tend to have far less anxiety
Hmm.
in that part of the world. But our westernized civilization at its core is so far away from a natural way of living
Hmm.
that they don't take it seriously. Bit controversial, but I'm almost at a point where I think that that's how they want people to be. They want people to be anxious because then they're just then they just sit there and consume basically.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what Western civilization has become about. Now that everything's been built, it's just about the big corporations and big
Yeah.
pharma making money. So I hear quite often a patient cured is a patient lost, and I
Hmm.
think that's probably pretty accurate.
No, you're definitely correct when it comes to that, because now it makes me not even want to go to the hospital. I don't think many people should, especially for certain things that are not critical. You break your arm, of course, you go to the hospital. Something more physical like that. But
Mhm.
if you have something, like a slight cold or anything around that, there are alternative methods to go about and curing that. Because going to a doctor, most of the time, if not all the time, they're just going to prescribe you some medicine.
Mhm.
And when it comes to medicine, it's not meant to cure you. It's just meant to treat whatever you have during the meantime. But it's not going to go away. It's still going to be there because then you become dependent on medication.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Like if I, as you said, if you have any physical trauma, then going to the hospital is a really good idea,
Mhm.
and their amazing doctors and surgeons will sort you out in that particular issue. But I think like chronic diseases, and all these sorts of things, like the amount of disease that is caused by just unhealthy lifestyle, unhealthy
Mhm.
thinking, and then you go to the hospital and they don't tell you that you need to change the way you think and behave. They just
Yeah.
say, well, here's a pill, take this pill, and what this will do is mask the symptoms, but
Mhm.
the underlying cause is still there. Um, I think our body is pretty amazing. It can heal itself, but people
Mhm.
have kind of given that power away. They've been told that they're victims and that like we're flawed and that if there's something wrong with you, you've got to go to the doctor.
Mhm.
But there's plenty of evidence um, that people can cure themselves when they learn to think differently. And yeah, but we obviously that's
Right.
hidden from us in this area of the world.
Yeah, because all it takes is just to eat better, exercise regularly. When I try to get at least about 10,000 steps a day, and have in mind,
Hmm.
I work in an office, so a lot of my time is taken up sitting in front of a computer. But I try to exercise, so I don't use that as an excuse. My goal is to hit a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. And then I exercise regularly. I lift weights, stuff like that. And then I try to eat healthy. But a lot of people are full of excuses, and it's not to blame them, but it's that we've become a society that promotes leisure time. So we promote just
Hmm.
sitting in front of a TV and watching Netflix or watching TikTok all day. And that's bad because you become dependent on devices and you become dependent on this lifestyle that is not healthy for you.
Yeah, exactly that. It takes effort. Like anything that's worth doing isn't easy. Otherwise, everyone would do it.
Hmm.
It's a lot easier to make the choice just to sit on the sofa rather than go for a 5 kilometer run.
Right.
It's like, and we're hardwired to seek comfort. I believe. So it takes like real effort and willpower to get off the sofa and start living in a more active way and making changes in your life. Um, the thing that I find is like motivation just doesn't come. Like you can't just sit there and all of a sudden you're motivated. What
Hmm.
happens is you have to get up and take action, and then you begin to become more motivated. It's like if you've got a snowball at the top of a hill and you roll the snowball down the hill and it picks up more and more and more snow and then becomes like a huge boulder by the bottom.
Yeah.
That's that's like what motivation is like. But if you don't push the ball over the edge of the hill, then
Hmm.
it's just going to sit there and do nothing. So yeah, basically whenever in doubt, whenever you need to improve something, take action.
Yeah.
It was there was a quote I heard the other day. It was something like inaction breeds fear and doubt, taking action breeds courage and confidence.
Yeah. No, you're correct. And we're spoiled because we are being rewarded without having any real effort. So you're scrolling on your phone and your dopamine receptors are just going out off the roof, but there's no real effort. So it's like an underlying feeling of anxiety just sitting there wasting your time. And I know most people feel it because it's like this minimal feeling of anxiety because you're being rewarded without actually putting in any effort for this. And I think that's why it's becoming such a huge issue. And I think social media and all these streaming platforms, like all these choices that
Mm.
we have now, is a major cause of
Mm.
all these issues that we're facing now.
Yeah, I feel sorry for like Gen Z. I
Yeah.
feel like I grew up and reached the end of high school just as mobile phones start to become common. So I was kind of like the last group of kids to miss the social media generation. And
Yeah.
thankfully, because now they've got their whole new struggle where everything is about earning validation and looking for people's approval and all this other stuff, and just like kids don't really play anymore. They just
Hmm.
sit at home on their phones. Whereas when I was younger, I'd always be outside with friends. Um, and yeah, it's just not a good way. It's not a good way of living. And the thing is, with this, even as adults, we sit there and we scroll through our phone, and I think a lot of that um, like frustration and anxiety is that you also in the back of your mind have, you know, that it's not good for you sitting
Hmm.
here looking at your phone, and you know there's things you could be doing to
Hmm.
improve your life, but you're not doing them because of that dopamine addiction. So that causes like a real divide as well of like what feels good but what's actually good for you.
So that's basically addiction because you're sitting there, you know that this is not good for you, but you can't stop yourself from doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. They've made us addicted.
Yeah, and we know it. We all know that this is not healthy. I mean, I guess if you're spending a few minutes on social media, scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, whatever, but then you go outside and actually do something productive, social media could be good for us because it's made us all connected.
Mhm.
That's why I'm able to sit here and speak with you because of the internet. But a lot of people use it just to waste time, and you could use it for good or you could use it for bad, and sometimes you build up bad habits because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference of using technology and being used by technology.
Hmm.
If you got the discipline to do it, then it's obviously a very useful tool. But of course, most people don't have that discipline.
Hmm.
Um, I at one point when I was really like in the depths of having to recover from anxiety and OCD,
Hmm.
I was basically 24 hours a day. All I was thinking about, right, how can I be happier? How can I be calmer? And I traded out my smartphone for one of those dumb phones, which basically just
Hmm.
texts and calls. And it
Yeah.
was really nice. Like I wasn't being notified every 5 minutes, and my concentration was better. My anxiety really started to lower, and I could sit there and read books for hours on end on like subjects that would improve myself. And then
Hmm.
as I got my business up and running, I thought, okay, I need a smartphone because I need to be able to receive emails and things like
Hmm.
that. Got it. And within a couple of days, it addicted me again. And
Yeah.
I've found now that I've had to like really separate myself from my phone. I just start leaving it upstairs in my bedroom
Hmm.
because I'd be reading a book, just read one page, and then be
Hmm.
like, what did I just read? I can't remember what I read, and I'd have to read it again, and it's just like
Yeah.
my concentration level is just ruined. So
Wow.
now I'm focusing on sorting that out again.
I've actually never thought of that because I mean there was a point that I spent hours on social media, and then when I would read books, I would not have the same concentration. And then as I started using social media less, I was able to concentrate more on what I was reading and actually get myself in the book and actually follow along. So I've actually never thought of that, and that's really interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite shocking actually.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there could be other variables, I suppose, why I wasn't able to concentrate, but it seems
Mhm.
like just picking my phone up every now and again, just looking at it all the time was what trained me to
Mhm.
lose concentration skills.
Because it builds up a short attention span. I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly that. Yeah. So it's constantly interrupting you. So it's like the whole point of meditation and mindfulness is to learn there, is to just sit there and focus on your breath and just hold your attention in one place.
Mhm.
But it's impossible to do if you're being distracted constantly.
Yeah, and not only that, because there's the fast dopamine hits from scrolling on your phone and getting all these videos as sent to you, or like on your feed. But it's also what you're seeing and different lifestyles, and it's become a huge thing on teenage girls because they see all these people online, and it makes them feel less because they're they're infatuated by what they see online, and a lot of it is not even real. It's all artificial. So they fall for these tricks, and now that also gives them anxiety because they feel that they're not at this level, and living a certain lifestyle, the lifestyle that they see on social media all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw it was like teen girls have like doubled the level of suicide in the
Hmm.
last 15 years or something. Yeah, which is just crazy. And yeah, so they sit there and watch all these unattainable standards, but then think that that's reality.
Hmm.
I heard like Kim Kardashian say that I wake up in the morning and take about 450 selfies and then post the best one. And it's like that's the selfie that these girls are comparing themselves to.
That's
It's
crazy.
unbelievable.
That's crazy because I mean, you're basically seeing the best of everyone, uh, and you think that that's just their normal life.
Mm.
And people have spoken about people that are like on television. After all this makeup, I think it was Dr. Phil that I heard him say this, that he goes into the back when he was doing Dr. Phil. I don't think that's around anymore, but back when he was doing his TV show, he would have all this makeup on, be prepared for the TV show, but he would say like, this is not how I actually look in real life. This is
Mm.
all just for film and or for TV. And that's basically what's going on, that you have all these props. There's jets that you could rent, not even functioning jets, just like a stage that you could go and just take photos to upload to so people could see that you're flying private. It's crazy now that everyone's trying to meet these standards that they don't even have. They just want a quick photo to show people that they're living a certain lifestyle that they can't even attain themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty guaranteed way of being unhappy
Hmm.
is if your happiness comes from the validation of other people that
Hmm.
you don't even know. Like
Yeah.
you're just asking for validation for people online. And if you're willing to go out of your way to pretend that you have a private jet, um, and then of course what's gonna happen is that you're gonna beat yourself up by realizing that you don't have a private jet and you're
Yeah.
not good enough. So
Yeah.
it's like you're just going to beat yourself up internally as well,
Hmm.
and no amount of external approval is going to change the way you feel. I i truly believe that happiness comes from within. It's like the
Hmm.
amount of times that I've thought, okay, I'll be happy when I get this, and then I've gone out and got that thing, and
Hmm.
then I've been like, oh cool, I'm happy for a couple of days. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm still the same person but just with this thing that I wanted. And it's like, and that's when I went internally, when I was real. I was like, wow, I know that like whatever you achieve in this world, not achieve, whatever you manage to gather in this world isn't really going to bring you true happiness. It's like
Hmm.
your internal world which will make you happy.
Do you think all this is a form of narcissism? It has to be.
Yeah, I'd say manufactured narcissism.
Hmm.
It's like it seems to be that our whole society has gone in that way. Um, you even get people like Andrew Tate who say,
Hmm.
like I've escaped the Matrix, and I'm
Yeah.
like, but have you? Like all you've done is gathered loads of wealth and cars, But how often do you see him smile? He just walks around with like a blank stare on his face. It's like that doesn't look
Mhm.
like a happy man to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's just very prideful, and I feel like that. I
Hmm.
mean, even in the Bible, whatever it said, that pride is one of the said seven deadly sins,
Yeah.
didn't it? So it puts you on the defense. It's all
Yeah.
like, yeah. So I don't think that there's anything you can gather in
Mhm.
this world which will bring true happiness.
Yeah.
It can
And
bring satisfaction and short-term pleasure, but
yeah, and I think we're all victims to that because when it comes to Andrew Tate, using him as an example, he says some good things. He says some bad things, and sometimes you don't know if he's whether he's joking or not. Um, but funny that you say that, like escaping the matrix. But he is a social media phenomenon and uploads all these photos to show how amazing life he's living. It would be different if it's the rat race, working paycheck to
mm,
paycheck, and then working or being stuck in the matrix, but still working to have to prove something to everyone. But when it comes to like masculinity, taking responsibility for your own actions, that everything is a choice. That's good that he says that. And
mhm.
I think a lot of people disagreed with that because you had this guy saying take personal responsibility because he also talks about depression. He says, I'm not depressed. I don't let myself be depressed because I know that I have a choice to do whatever I want. So if I'm depressed, that's my choice. And a lot of people disagree with that. And I think that's also an issue because if someone is going to depression and I'm not a medical expert or anything, but I could attest to the point that sometimes you feel powerless, and telling or having someone tell you that you have the power to change that could be uncomfortable. And I think that's why a lot of people didn't like that about him. So, he says some things that are crazy, but he says some things that are also true. That if you are living a lifestyle that you don't like, that you could change that you have the power to change that. And I think when it comes to that or those words, a lot of people could use that. And I feel that it could also help with anxiety. Like, you're doing something that is not good for you. Like, put that thing away and do what you love to do.
Yeah, when I started my journey of recovering from anxiety,
Hmm.
it was very much like I made a decision. I'm not going to be a victim anymore.
Hmm.
I'm going to take 100% responsibility for my mental health.
Hmm.
I'm not going to listen to any doubts in my mind. I'm not going to Unfortunately, I had a great mentor who
Hmm.
guided me through this, so I could always go to him with questions and stuff like that. And if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have been in this position now. Um, but it's like with Andrew Tate and things like that, I guarantee, like, I agree absolutely. Take responsibility
Hmm.
for your own life. You're not a victim. But the thing is that people have been told they're a victim
Yeah.
for like their whole life. And when you're constantly beaten with the victim stick, do you really think some guy coming along and saying you're not a victim, and they're going to go, oh yeah, I'm not a victim because this one guy said so? It's like
Yeah.
you've been programmed your whole life to think that you're powerless and that you can't
Hmm.
change it. So I do completely agree with him in that regard,
Hmm.
but you have to be able to look inside yourself and
Hmm.
find out the truth of things to actually realize, okay, I'm
Hmm.
not a victim. I am in control of my life.
Yeah.
Um, but for people with that belief system that they are, and they've been told it their whole life, all it does is trigger them
Hmm.
because they don't believe that it's possible.
Yeah. And when it comes to following what people say, um, it's tricky with some people because I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to 100% agree with someone or 100% disagree with someone.
Mm,
For example, that say that I'm supporting like a politician, and
mhm,
he says uh, so many great things, and then he says something that I don't disagree with, or something that is not in line. But there's people that are going to support this person no matter what. And once they say something that's probably crazy, I don't think that they have it in them to disagree with that. And I'm going to use Trump as for an example. He says some good things. He says some bad things. Let's just say that. But there are people that will fall in line and agree with everything he says and feel like they don't have, I should say, the capacity to disagree with them. And some people are blind to that. So when you have a figure like Andrew Tate, he says a bunch of horrible things. Let's just turn it upside down. He says a bunch of horrible things, but he has that one thing that he says that it's good to hear. But because he says so many bad things, and then he says that one good thing, like take personal responsibility because you disagree with him, like for what he mostly says, right? And then you're going to disagree with that one point and call yourself a victim and say, no, I'm a victim and then I have no choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, 100%. It's kind of like people want a savior. It's
Hmm.
like with Trump, I don't think the Democrat, like obviously I'm British, so
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not too deeply involved with it, but I see a lot of American politics, and I think the
Hmm.
Democrats didn't do a great job, to say the least. I
Yeah.
don't also like Trump. I think I don't
Hmm.
really like any politician. I
Yeah.
believe that you should be like your own hero.
Hmm.
Um, but the thing is, it's like they will listen to whatever he says and they'll agree with it because they're like, Trump is the savior.
Hmm.
But if people, instead of listening to what someone like who's saying it,
Hmm.
imagine that everything that he's doing, it was actually Kamala Harris that was
Yeah.
saying these things.
Hmm.
How would you react if it was Kamala saying this?
Yeah.
Like, if she decided to go with policies that you agree with, yeah, great. But if she then says something you completely disagree with, you'd call her out because you're on the other side. But if Trump does that, a lot of people will probably be like, oh, well, it's Trump. Like, he's mostly good. Like, and they'll just go
Yeah.
along with it. I one of the biggest things, like one of the earliest things and most
Hmm.
important things that I found for my mental health was
Hmm.
to ask myself the question, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
Because if you want to be right, you're going to constantly be arguing, constantly defending your beliefs. And it's exhausting to use that much energy to
Right.
try and like think all the time. But you can just choose to just say, I don't need to have an opinion. I can just let the world be as it
Hmm.
is. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And it's not my job to change the world. It's my
Hmm.
job just to live in it and do the best that I can. And then
Hmm.
you're not constantly fighting inside your head trying to prove everyone else wrong.
Hmm.
And what I also found is as I went on this journey and started to learn more and more about mental health and more about how that world actually works,
Hmm.
basically everything I believed to begin with was wrong anyway, but I would have defended those beliefs with my life. And
Yeah.
it's like, what do we like? I think Socrates said, like, the only wisdom is knowing that you know nothing.
Hmm.
So the more you know, like, the more you look, the more you realize that you don't really know anything.
Yeah. And I've seen a good analogy to this, and it's say that you're in an island, and it's just a small piece of land, right? But as the water recedes, it shows more of the island. So there's more volume of land to water, and that's how knowledge is. So the less that you feel like you're in this piece of land, and the shore is smaller, so that's your knowledge, right? But as the ocean recedes, there's more land volume, so that becomes your knowledge. So now you feel like you know less. So the more that you actually learn, I think that's how the analogy goes. I'm sorry if that's wrong, but
Mm.
I think that's how the analogy goes. So the more that you learn, the more that you realize that there's more knowledge out there that you don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, that's when you start to begin to become humble, is when
Hmm.
you just say, well, I don't know. You're like, am I right or am I wrong? I don't know. Is that
Hmm.
person good? I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Hmm.
And that's like you're then being honest with yourself rather than saying, like, believing those old program beliefs that were just put into you as you
Hmm.
were a child, to think that I know exactly how the world works, and because I'm right, that other person has to be wrong. Um, I'm not quite witnessed this myself because I'm still on my journey, but my
Hmm.
mentor has been doing this for like 20 years, told me that as the mind quietens down, you suddenly just know things. Like it's not like an
Hmm.
understanding, it's like
Right.
underneath, like you kind of just know it, like in this your intuition.
Hmm.
I've also heard him say things which would I would completely rejected to begin
Hmm.
with, but because he guided me and nudged me in this direction,
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm open to it. And he said that like as his mind started to quieten down, sometimes he'd have like downloads, like just of
Yeah.
information just come into his conscious awareness, and then he'd make
Hmm.
videos and stuff like that about it because the information just came in.
Hmm.
And it's not like it's like if you ask like a great artist or a
Hmm.
musician, like where did it come from? They wouldn't sit there and be like, oh yeah, I thought about it and figured it out. They just say, well, I don't know. It just came to me. I was inspired.
Hmm.
So that's like that's the sort of thing going from an ego-based
Hmm.
understanding to like a real knowing underneath it.
Yeah. Um, and where do you think that comes from? And then, where do you think that that craving for knowledge comes from? Because do you think it's something that could actually be developed later in life, or you're born with?
What do you mean? So a craving for knowledge?
Yeah. So, because there are certain people that feel like they know everything, and they get stuck in that. And I feel like some people may actually have gone through that phase when they feel like they know everything, but the more that they learn, the more that they realize that they really don't know anything. So, where do you think that comes? Do you
Yeah.
think people are born with that, or do you think that that is developed later in life?
I think people have to normally come to that conclusion at some point throughout their life when they
Mm-hmm.
start to realize, wait a minute, this just seems to be not quite as I was told. The world isn't working as I was told it would in school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think anyone's born with that. I don't mean they could be, I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But I tend to like, I don't, if someone says I know something, then if they haven't got any evidence, I'll just be like, do you? But if they say I believe something, I'll say, okay, cool, I can respect that. Like, tell
Yeah.
me why you believe it. Um, it's like the people who seem to think they know everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I was like 21, you like that sort of age, you think you know everything,
Yeah.
don't you? And then you just realize actually those are the people who know the least. They don't know anything, like
Yeah.
because they're so prideful. And if you say you know something, you're not going to listen to anyone else's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So you become completely closed-minded.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest issue, that people become close minded. And I feel like some people never actually grow out of that, and they remain close minded for the rest of their life. Right.
Yeah, and it is a shame. It's a shame. Like
Hmm.
people, it's one of the funniest things that one of the sayings like ignorance is bliss.
Hmm.
It's like ignorance is not bliss. Like it I mean, it's painful to not know what's really going on because like when you find out what's actually going on in the world and how it's run and all these
Yeah.
sorts of things, it'll make you angry. But then on the other side of it, you learn how to detach and you learn how to live your life in
Hmm.
spite of it, rather than not even knowing it exists and then carrying on as a victim, told like believing that
Hmm.
your ignorance is a blessing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but it's something that we definitely need to take a bigger look at, because a lot of people do get lost in their ignorance, and they find comfort in being ignorant and not really understanding the world around them.
Yeah,
Right.
it's and that's the easiest way to eject people from your life is to
Hmm.
challenge their belief systems if they're not ready for it. Because yeah, like people will just get so triggered if you say something that they don't believe were, and like I mean, you can see it everywhere in America. You can just see it everywhere, can't you?
Yeah, yeah. But listen, it's been great speaking with you, and thank you for coming on. And this has been a really interesting conversation, and it was fast paced, but I think we got it.
Yeah, awesome. I very much appreciate it. I've enjoyed it. It's been an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.